little bit of elevator. Could be adding rudder here, but I'm not. 43 knots. Whoa, okay, too much elevator. I think we're gonna die. Hello again. This is the A2A Simulations Cessna 172 that was recently released, and what a fantastic plane it is too. In this video we're gonna have a look around this lovely plane, and then we're gonna go for a bit of a fly. As you can see, they've done a really great job on this aircraft. Just panning around the outside, and we'll jump in now and have a look inside. So here we are inside. The quality from A2A is, as you'd expect, absolutely fantastic. You can see that they've spared no expense at all in modelling this plane. What a fantastic interior as well. Our controls are locked at the moment. We're sitting here at 2S1 Vashon Island, cold and dark. So in a moment we will do a walk around, and then we'll start this thing up and go for a bit of a fly. So we'll start off with our control locks. We'll just unlock those to free our controls. You can see that it lives down here once the control has been unlocked. Now we're flying from Vashon Island, which is where we are based at the moment, across to KHQM Bowerman today. The weather's great for it, but before we do that, we'll have a look at the hangar and see what the A2A mechanic has to say about the plane, and then we'll do our walk around. So we'll just jump outside. Okay. Now, as you can see, this airplane is used, so I've selected a used version of the aircraft with over 2,000 hours on the airframe, 700 hours on the engine. There are some issues that need to be taken care of, so let's look at the engine to start with. Now you'll see that the vacuum pump needs to be replaced because it has completely failed. We need that for our instruments, so we'll fix that up. Our fuel injection system is also worn. Now this is pretty critical, but I'm going to take a chance with this one and leave it as is. What we can also do is, I'll show you this in just a sec as well. I'll just first show you the oil. So basically you can choose the grade of oil that you can run in your engine. You can run a multi-grade like these here. We're running a straight 100 weight at the moment. There's also an additive you can use, but I won't go into that too much further right now. Here's the spark plugs you can choose. Where this is the fine wire spark plug, so this is the new type that you can run, but we're currently running the massive type, which is the conventional plug. A lot cheaper, but more prone to fouling as well. A2A have really modelled the engine dynamics fantastically, I should say, as always. I'm just going to run a compression test and see what the cylinders are looking like. Now this engine's got over 700 hours on it, so you can see cylinder 1 is a little bit low, but in my non-expert opinion, seems okay. Up here you've got the aileron, and down here you can see the aileron actuator needs to be serviced. Now I'm going to go ahead and leave that as is and just see what happens. The brakes on the right hand side also are worn as well. In reality, you'd replace that aileron the first sign that it gives you trouble, but we're just going to run with it today and see what happens. Yes. Okay, so that's the hangar done. What we'll do now is have a look at our payload manager. Now we're running just one person today in the plane, just me, the pilot. You can see the oil levels a little bit under full, but okay otherwise. Fuel levels are about 3/4, or just a little bit under 3/4 actually. Now what we'll do is we'll do a bit of a walk around and just check all the systems of the plane. So this is the walk around panel. Starts off in the cabin, so let's do that. Just click here on the little square and we're back inside. Now the walk around calls for pitot tube testing and also the wing flaps. So we need to get the battery going, which I'm just doing now. You can see the idiot lights flashing away there. Just going to turn on the pitot heat because we need to check that it actually gets warm. And I'm just going to drop the flaps. About 20 degrees. This will give us a good visual inspection to see how they work as well. Left hand flap's fine. We'll go ahead and we'll check on the right hand side shortly as well. But let's get outside and have a real look, I guess. So this is the new walk-around format that A2A have released for the Cessna. You can actually grab the flap and give it a nice wiggle and see there's quite a bit of slack there. I actually had a new version of this plane. I've selected the used version, but in the used version, as you can see here, there's quite a bit of slack, whereas in the brand new version with no hours, things were pretty tight. Okay, now you can have a look also at the hinges and actuators for the flaps. Again, in my non-expert opinion, that all seems good. Now these are static images, but they actually change if there's a fault. So keep your eyes peeled and make sure you do your walkarounds, because otherwise you could find yourself in trouble. So we're just underneath the left-hand wing now, and what we need to do is basically just check the control surfaces for the aileron, or the aileron control surface on the left-hand side. Check the hinges. Now as you can see, well, it all looks okay, but the hangar does report that the actuator is worn. So you may not be able to tell that from here. Well, I certainly couldn't, but the hinges themselves look okay. We'll check the lights here while we're here as well. Just check the wingtip. Everything looks good. Okay, now we're at the front of the left-hand wing now. Just bear with me, my track IR's just clipping a little bit here. Okay, so basically we just want to check the front of the wing here, things like the stall warning, the pitot tube, make sure there's no obstructions, things like that, fuel vent opening. We'll remove the tie down while we're here as well, which I've just done. Okay, fuel vent looks fine. Wingtip looks fine. All looks good. The stall horn warning, or the stall warning opening, I believe is on the right hand side here. Hang on a sec. These are your landing lights. There's the stall warning there. Okay, just move down to the left hand side. We've got the left hand tyre. Check for proper inflation. Condition looks fine, I guess. Now we're going to drain a bit of fuel from the left hand side. Now again, these images are static, but they do change if there's water in the fuel, I'm led to believe. This appears to be fine from what I can tell. You can actually drain more, I believe, if there's water in it, to see what the rest of the fuel looks like. All seems fine. Now we're up top here on the left hand wing. What we're going to do is just put the dipstick in and just check that we've got enough fuel in the left hand tank. Okay, so this is a static image, but that little bar in the middle of the dipstick does change. So we've got about 16-17 gallons. There's a few little points around the plane you can check. This is our static source opening. I believe if you click on that it clears any blockages, but it appears to be fine. So we'll move on. Now checking the front of the plane. Now I have seen obstructions in the front, in the cowling vents before, like a rag or something like that. Today everything looks fine. You can clear the debris, I believe, by clicking that little button in the actions panel in the pop-up, but that all looks good. No issues there. Propeller looks good as well. Spinner's fine. We'll move on. Again, you can check the propeller a little bit closer if you like. No problems. Now we're down under the nose here, where you can actually drain a bit more fuel. See that everything's fine. The front tire looks fine. Up here at the top of the engine, of the cowling, on the right hand side, we can check the oil. Now Accu-sim models oil, so if the oil's dirty it can cause corrosion. You can change the oil. They recommend changing every 25 hours or 4 months. You can extend that a bit more if you're running it every day, and Accu-sim measures when your computer's off too. So it's all pretty amazing. I believe it does model moisture in the fuel tanks when the plane's sitting for a long time as well. So just checking out the right hand fuel tank now, just making sure that everything's all good there. There's enough fuel. Now we're underneath the right hand wing, again checking the fuel for any moisture, excessive moisture or water. Checking the right hand main tyre. Just got my track IR working there. Right tyre looks fine anyway. Now let's remove the tie down on the right hand side as well. We did the left hand side earlier. Again, A2A have done an absolutely fantastic job with this plane. I cannot fault it. So we'll click there to remove the tie down. Almost done. We're just going to come around to the rear section. Actually no, still under the right hand wing. We have to check the wingtip on this side. Lights condition seems fine. You can actually turn the lights on. I probably should have actually. But let's just check out the aileron on the right hand side. No problems. Hinges look fine. Now we're going to check the right hand flap system. Again, there's quite a bit of slack in it. As I said before, I had a new version of the plane before with 0 hours on it, and it was quite a bit tighter. Actuators, hinges, things like that seem fine for the flaps. Again, those images can change if there's a problem, and they can actually show you the issue. Now we're back here at the tail, just checking out the elevators. Trim, nice and tight, no problems. Remove that tie down while we're at it. Now we'll check out the hinges and actuators for the elevators. Elevators look fine. Linkages, again these images can and will change if there's a problem, so keep your eyes peeled. They're not just there for show. Now here we are, almost finished. We're behind the pilot's door on the left hand side, as you can see here. Just want to make sure that this little baggage door is closed and locked. Okay, it's locked. And you can verify that by clicking again, which I'll do now. Locked. Excellent. So that's nice and secure now for the flight. Okay, so we're back here in the cabin, having completed our walk around of the outside of the plane. Just going to check that the pitot tube is nice and warm. Don't burn your fingers, as it says. So this is the reason why we had the battery going. Just click here. It's warm. So the heating system for the pitot tube is working. I think I've done this walk around in the reverse manner. Because I've got the EZCA cameras, it can affect the walk around views. So this is the reason why I've had to go in the reverse order for the walk around. And you'll notice there's a whole other list of things there to check in the cabin, which I haven't gone through in this video just for the sake of time. But let's just check out the interior and listen to some of those sounds. Just fantastic. Look at the center radio stack. All these buttons have been recorded off the real plane, and each button has its own sound as well, even if they look like they're the same sort of switches. Just listen to that. Battery's off, so the flaps aren't working, but just listen to that lever. Even the ailerons sound different left and right. Elevators. Okay. Ailerons appear to be working fine. Elevators seem fine. Okay, we're almost there. We're just going to button up the cockpit in a second, get the engine going, do a bit of a warm-up, taxi out to the field, and be on our way, basically. Let's have a look at this interior. It's absolutely wonderful. Can't get enough of this. Alright, whoops, our flaps are down all the way now. Okay, that's fine. Let's raise them all the way up again. Okay, nice positive action there. We'll close up the door, lock it, and we'll just crack our window a bit. A bit of air, because the interior does fog up, especially when you got a lot of people in here, and there are people modelled as well. I won't show you that just yet, but quite challenging when you've got 4 people and a bit of weight in the back. Alright, I'm just going to check the outside air temperature. 19 degrees, so we won't need a lot of priming. Because it's a fuel injected system, we won't use a plunger type primer. We just got the fuel pump, electric fuel pump and mixture, so you don't have to prime for too long because it's quite warm, probably about 2 to 3 seconds or so. So we'll go ahead and do that now, and we'll get the engine going. So we've got the fuel pump running. Just going to crack the throttle, and we're going to give it full mix, full rich, and check for fuel flow on that gauge. No fuel flow. What's going on? Can you see the issue? Our fuel cock is in shut-off mode, so let's just reactivate that so we get fuel. Now go full rich with the throttle cracked, and watch that fuel flow increase. There's a bit of fuel flow there, and back out again. So only for a few seconds, then back to full lean, then switch off the fuel pump. Now she's got some fuel in the chamber, and we're going to crank it over and see what she gives us. Make sure your throttle's cracked and the propeller is clear, so in real life you do a bit of a check like I'm doing here. Make sure there's no one underneath the plane with a spanner. We'll try that again. Oh, here we go. Caught. Now full rich. Keep the engine running and give her a bit of power. You want to idle under 1000 RPM when the engine's bone cold, I guess, stone cold as it is now. Flip on the alternator switch. Get that battery charging up. So we've put quite a bit of drain on it so far in this video. So it's charging, we've got fuel flow, fuel levels indicate okay. Oil temperature is cold, so we want to wait for that to get into the green zone before we do any high power running. Oil pressure is fine, which is what we want. Different oil weights will give you different oil pressure as well, and oil pressure will drop as the engine warms as well. So that's all modelled by Accu-sim. It's absolutely fantastic. Can't say that enough about this plane. We've still got our wheel chocks on, as you can probably see there. I've just leaned out a touch for ground running, because you can fail the spark plugs if you run in full rich at low RPMs like we're doing now. So we've just got to wait for our oil temperature to rise a little bit, and then we'll be on our way. Just lean out the mixture a little bit more there. This is our radio stack as I showed you before. What I'll do, I'll just quickly show you up here when my track IR wants to work. Got our little map lights up here. Now these all put a drain on the battery as well. I'll show you the panel lights too in a second. These map lights are particularly nice. So down here you've got your instrument lights. I'll turn these on. You've got your glare shields as well, your panel. It doesn't seem to be working at the moment. It all looks quite nice at night time anyway. I'm just going to kill the engine now, just to show you the physics of it. Accu-sim models every cylinder and the compression in every cylinder. You've got the idiot lights on there. I'm just going to turn on the avionics and show you the radios and the GPS. So you've got your standard radio stack here with your frequencies. You've got your active and your standby. Up here you've got your GPS. This is the Garmin GPS. And it's quite handy. I'm just going to do a direct to, because we're flying to KHQM Bowman today. So I'm using the direct to function, and I'm going to input the code for Bowman. The inner dial selects your letters, and the outer dial selects the cursor. So I'm just selecting KHQM, which is the code for Bowman. Just bear with me a sec while I do that. And we want M. There we go. Now Bowman in Washington. Hit enter once you've got your selection. Enter again, and then you'll see activate light up, and enter once more. And that's it. You've got your waypoint set there from our aircraft in this direction. So we'll be taking off and heading in a west, in the direction of 240 almost, I believe. Alright, now we're putting a drain on that peril battery again. You can change the battery types in Accu-sim as well. I'm running the standard battery. Seems to be fine. But we'll get her started again, and we'll fly out of this little airfield. Quite a rough little airfield too. Now what we want to do before we start is we want to make sure our avionics are off. I'll just prime. Okay, now we're primed. Let's turn off the avionics switch, otherwise you could cause electrical surges into the equipment, and it's not good. Okay, so we'll crank her over once again. Nothing. Okay, we'll try it again. Oh, just caught. Yes, just caught it. Increase the RPMs a little bit. We've got our volts annunciator on, which means our alternator is not working, so we'll just switch that on. And our battery is now charging. The engine had started to warm from before, so we'll just keep that going now, and we'll be taxiing out shortly. Now you may notice that I've leaned out quite aggressively for ground operation again. As I mentioned before, that stops the plugs from fouling up, so you want to make sure you've got it pretty lean while you're idle. So we'll just go ahead and get the avionics running again. So we'll turn on our avionics switch. Our GPS is going as well. Okay, so we're looking pretty clear. We've got the tower frequency tuned in, I believe, already. No obstructions. Just go ahead and remove those wheel chocks now. So I'll just bring up the controls menu and remove those chocks so that we can taxi. Okay, we're pretty good to go. Our oil temperature is almost in the green zone, so we can start to taxi. I'm just going to turn on our taxi nav strobe and beacon lights, and going to tell the tower what we're doing. I'll just bring up the map for a sec and see which runway it is that we're taking off from. Okay.
Sierra 1, traffic, Cessna, November 727, Fort Hotel is taxiing to runway 17.
Okay, so we'll release the parking brake, and you can see that we're already starting to creep forward. So we'll get on those rudder pedals, and we just want to veer off to the left, avoid those long weeds and grass things. We're running a bit lean, so it's not really giving us any power. Just going to richen it up a bit, get on the brake a bit. They've done an excellent job on the taxiing and ground handling physics of the plane. Seems a lot more realistic than the stock Cessna that comes with flight sim. Now this is a grass field runway, a soft field I should say, and you can really hear the cabin creaking away as we taxi. Keeping the RPMs up. I'm in full rich, but as we slow down we're going to lean out a bit just to keep those plugs clear, as I mentioned earlier. You can see our oil temperature is rising a bit. Listen to that interior. We've got our taxi light on, as you can see, on the left hand wingtip, wing leading edge. Oh, it's quite rough, as you can see. Alright, we're at the end of the runway. We're just going to swing it around. And this is the Orbex 2S1 Vashon Island Hayware airfield. Nestled amongst a group of trees. Just going to pause here and run up the engine and do a magneto check. Now I've leaned out pretty hard, but I'm going to go full reach and take it up to 1800 RPM. Now I'm going to switch the magneto to the left hand side and note the drop in RPM. It's quite a drop there. Right hand side seems slightly better. Go back to left. Yeah, the left side is a bit worse for wear. So we'll try and clear that out by going back to both and leaning out pretty hard. Now I'm hard on the brakes here as well. Watch the oil temperatures, make sure they're in the green zone before you do this. I'm just leaning out pretty hard now, and you can see the engine's really dropping in RPM. It's getting quite warm in there right now. Now back to idle, full rich, and back up to 1800 RPM. Now we're going to do another mag check. So we're in both, we're going to go to left, still got that drop. Go to right, seems a bit better. Back to left, still got that drop, and back to both. It could just be because the aircraft has so many hours on it that the parts are just a bit more worn, but I'm going to try leaning out once more. There's over 700 hours on this engine, so it's not going to behave like a new plane. We'll go full rich again. Back to 1800 RPM, do another check. Still a marked drop there on the left magneto. About 100 RPM, which is probably a little bit higher than normal. But there's not much roughness at least. See how we go. We're going to dial in 10 degrees flaps. Turn off the taxi light and tell the tower what we're doing.
2 Sierra 1, traffic, Cessna, November 727, Fort Hotel, taking off, runway 17, departing straight
Go
out.
full reach. I'm going to take it easy on the takeoff roll because it's quite a rough runway. Flaps are down and away we go. Normally you go full throttle here to get going, but it's quite bumpy, so I'm just going to try and take it easy. You'll see what I mean by bumpy as well. I'll just dial in a bit more power. We're not nearly going fast enough. I'll try and give her a little bit of elevator. A little bit of elevator. Tripiating right here, but I'm not. 43 knots. Whoa. Okay, too much elevator. I think we're going to die. No, not really, but we're close. Full power, full power. Okay. Not the best takeoff, but I wanted to keep it nice and slow to avoid any excessive damage to the undercarriage. Now we're full reach, full throttle. I'm going to keep those flaps at 10 degrees until we clear that tree line. We're being suspended in the air by our propeller. Well, it certainly feels like that. And it looks like I forgot to set my altimeter. Naughty, naughty. And now we've got some altitude. Just gonna turn the plane over to the right. Line up our waypoint on the GPS. I wonder why it's so noisy. Forgot to close the window. Okay, that's done. You can also plug your headphones in as well in the simulation. Just going to retract those flaps fully, get us a bit more speed and level off a little. Going to be climbing up to a few thousand feet. I'll check back in with you guys later. I just wanted to show you guys something. I think we've got an issue. That's right, the left hand early on has completely failed and it's just fluttering around in the wind with the airflow that goes over it. Let's compare it to the right hand side. We're basically down to one early on now. So this is a very dangerous situation, and in real life we would have repaired that before we took off, but we didn't, and this is the consequence. And let's see if we can continue to Bowerman without any further issue.
Tower on traffic, Cessna November 7274 Hotel is on final runway 6 to land.
So we have made it after all. Managed to nurse this plane back to Bowerman, or over to Bowerman. Right early on is hanging in there, left early on is still completely failed. That actuator must have completely snapped en route. Just got our controls a bit off center because of this issue. Just trying to keep it steady. Coming in a little bit high. I've also set the altimeter correctly, like I should have done before I took off. But that's all dialed in now. Just coming into land now. We've got 10 degrees of flaps on. Going to land and see what the hangar has to say about the condition of the aeroplane, and in particular that troublesome control surface there. Coming in a bit too high. This is probably one of the first few real flights I've had with this plane so far, so I'm going to try and take it easy on the landing, even if it means I might float a little bit. So just bear with me while I try and put her down as gently as possible. I am floating after all. Almost there. It's a good thing the runway is long. Keep the front wheel in the air for as long as you can. Land on the main wheels first, and then down on the front wheel. Okay, just cleared the runway. Let the tower know that we're clear of the runway. Going to taxi over to our parking area and see what the damage is, basically. Remember to lean aggressively while you're on the ground, as always, to prevent fouling. The hangar can also fix up any fouling issues you have, provided you're on the ground. More realistically, you need to be on the ground to do that. So I've leaned out quite a bit, as you can see. Flaps up. Just going to pull in here. And shut her down and take a look. Okay, we'll just give it one last clear out, lean it out a bit. Go full rich, then lean it out. Here's the RPM. Hard on the brakes. Lean more. Lean a bit more. Getting nice and toasty in there. Lean. And throttle back. Always good to clear the plugs out that way. Okay. Cut the mixture to turn the engine off. Open the door, get some air. You can see that aileron's just completely failed still. It's just drooping downwards uselessly compared to the right hand side, which works fine. I've got full movement on the controls and nothing at all out of that left aileron. So this is a good sort of lesson, I guess. When you see your control surfaces in trouble, make sure you fix them before you fly. Seems fairly obvious, but it's a good test to see just what Accu-sim is about with the A2A Cessna. We made it, but let's check the hangar and see what it has to say. So as you can see, the aileron now is in red, so it's completely failed. We should have fixed it before, but we didn't, and it failed, but we can fix it now. Let's check the engine out. No change in the condition there, which is fine. And you'll see there in the notes that it's important to pre-flight your plane. Okay, that's basically it for this video. Hope to make many more videos with the A2A Cessna in future. Do some touch and goes, some more flying, some more maintenance, load it up with a few more people maybe, and see how we go. Thanks for watching.